You're listening to The Real Deal Conversations, a podcast designed to encourage, inspire, and equip you by sharing real stories and meaningful conversations that bring real life to the surface. I'm your host, Megan Deal. Let's dive in. Today, I have Chance Potts, the one and only, and I'm very excited about this. I was introduced to Chance by Coach Perry. Yeah, I had reached out to him. I said, hey, I want to do some local spotlights. I said, do you have any friends or do you know anybody with great integrity and character? And that has a significant impact to be able to encourage and show hope to other people. And within minutes, your name was texted to me. And I was like, okay, here we go. So Chance, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate Coach Perry's kind words. I appreciate getting to connect with you. I mean, really getting to meet you, and I love what you're doing. So as we've talked and messaged back and forth, and you even participated with me in one of the things I get to do. And, that just says what you value, and anybody who values sharing people's stories, helping people grow, that's pretty much all I do in anything I do. And I'm very fortunate to be able to do that now. I do other things in business, and some of those do occupy my hours, but I'm able to select and choose, really where I put my focus and my time. And I'm thankful to be able to be here and do this crazy thing, at 55. I mean, this wasn't here when I was growing up. So it's pretty cool.
No, I really appreciate you coming on, and I'm excited to dive in. I'm really excited. I was going over your transition outline and I was like, wow, you have a very diverse adversity, a lot of resilience, and it's powerful. It's powerful. And I'm really excited to hear all the detail behind it. So we can just get started. One of the things that you had mentioned was, which must have been significant because it was the first thing you had mentioned, it was your youngest memories were your dad teaching you street smarts and nonverbal communication from 3 to 6 years old, which is kind of crazy because 3 years old, that's young.
Yeah, it's very young. And it's weird that I remember that. My dad passed away a couple of years ago, and, loved my dad immensely. I'm thankful he loved me. 90% of my dad's life, I'm 55. So for 53 years, I watched his dysfunction. So there was so much dysfunction that most of my adult life, once I figured out that dysfunction that existed, I was honestly, as much as I loved him, I was trying not to be like him. There's, 10 to 20% that he shared with me that is truly priceless. I mean, number one, just to have a dad who loved me as much as he did. I mean, there's so many kids that don't have a father or a parent who love them like he did. And he loved me with everything. He was just so dysfunctional in the marriage and in relationship, how to be a father, how to be a business person, how to be responsible, and how to be healthy. And so just a lot of those things. So he was the youngest of 7, I believe. And he was kind of the black sheep. So he's a little bit rough. He was a Christian. He was definitely someone who believed in God, but he was a little bit rough around the edges, and he felt like I needed to be tough. So I think really what he was teaching me was, at a very young age, I remember he would take me to coffee shops. And it was on Glenstone. It's on the corner of Glenstone and St. Louis. It used to be called the Sycamore Inn. It's a hotel now. And he would take me there like 3, 4, 5 days a week. And I just remember it because of the repetition of it. And it was for quite a few years. And he would, just have me pay attention to people walking in, like room awareness. And he would introduce me to anybody he ever knew. And he was always impressing upon me the importance of your body posture, your eye contact, your handshake. And even to the point that as I grew older and we would talk, because he did it past the young age, he always would include it. It would then be wanting, like when he put me in boxing in the 4th grade, after I'd been bullied for a few years, he really wanted me to know that room awareness. So he never wanted me to start a fight, but he wanted me to know how to pick up on the vibes of a room, like if there was danger or if there was the way somebody's standing or thinking or whatever, because he was a little bit rough, and he always wanted to know he could take care of himself. His dad died when he was 8. And I think he inherently just kind of felt like he had to be tough going through life, and he wanted me to be tough. And then he always wanted to be successful in business, and he always felt like street smarts were the most important thing. But his businesses never remained successful. He would have success and lose it, over and over and over again. And I say this because it's just true. And sometimes I question myself, it's like, gosh, I feel like I'm talking bad about my dad too often, but I really do it in hopes that it can be a lesson for people in that, my dad, I'm guessing from age 26 to 86, that 60 years, sometimes we think just because we live 60 years, we have 60 years of experience. All the years I knew my dad, it was 60 years of experience. It was 1 year of experience repeated 60 times. Like I never saw my dad learn from his mistakes. He would teach me things about errors and all kinds of challenges he would have. And he would want me to know about those to learn in hopes that maybe I wouldn't face it. But he just was on repeat his entire life.
Yeah.
And it was a challenge to watch and participate. As I got older, I found myself getting angry so often because he wasn't who I wanted him to be. And, he always wanted to be my hero, but he always struggled. He like self-sabotaged and just didn't do the work. He would start a business and an idea and would go sell everybody everything, but wouldn't do the work to make it work. And the little success would be he would have just enough success to get comfortable and ruin him.
Yeah.
And it was just a cycle of that. So I think the business side of him wanting me to be street smart, and then the side of he had to be tough growing up. He wanted me to be tough. So those were the two things. But yeah, I can't even get that stuff out of my mind.
Yeah. Well, and so a question that kind of comes to my mind when you're talking about this is because there's a lot of people who there is a parent that is dysfunctional. How do you, because I heard you say positive things about your dad, but also acknowledging that there was a dysfunction. How do you separate the two? Like, how do you not lob them together and just, Yeah,
it's a great question. I would say the way I lob them together, and I've had to learn this from coaches, is I look at the dysfunction as a blessing because I've learned as much or more from that I don't want to be than I might have learned if I was comfortable and learned from somebody who was more functional. Now, I was just talking with a group. I got to think about who this was. It was a group of young people, and I was sharing with them just to look, don't take any example of a parent. And it was I know what it was. It was our leadership group with the football program. And we will talk about things like, I had a dysfunctional dad, or somebody else will say they had a phenomenal dad. Well, we're all going to have whatever we have, right? We don't get to control that, but we do get to decide what we're going to do with it. And what I learned from coaches was, how can I take any of it and just look at it from, what have I learned from this? What can how can I grow from this? What can I do with this? And as angry as my dad made me throughout the years, and I struggled with it, especially in his older years, I really struggled with it because he still hadn't changed. And I'm just like, it's driving me crazy, and he thinks he knows so much. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I got to bite my tongue all the time. My wife's like, on the drive there, she would be telling me, look, getting mad is not going to help. He is not going to change. He thinks what he thinks. And it's like, all that does is just add tension in a relationship that doesn't make it better, And so I've had so much help, along the way that I've had other people help me have other perspectives. So
I love that though. I love that you say help people give you other perspectives. I'm big on that. Like, I will seek out where I see a weakness in myself. I will seek out people who have that strength in order to help me fill in the gap. So you were raised by a single mom.
Yeah, most of my life, yeah.
Yeah. So then did your dad live in the area?
He did, in all kinds of different apartments up and down the road that we lived on, Ingram Mill, down the road from Glendale High School. So yeah, he was in the area, all but in crazy thing that happened today, you would go to jail for it. But I was 11 years old. It was the summer before my 6th grade year. And my dad had left, I think just before maybe I was 8 or around that time. And it was very ugly. I mean, he was always big on me, but always kind of talking bad about my mom. And my mom had my older sister, myself, and my younger brother. My younger brother had a very severe disability called cerebral palsy, and he couldn't do anything but smile. I mean, it was ironic that that's the only thing he could do. And she changed his diaper every day, or every diaper, fed him every meal, and bathed him every day to every other day for 22 years. And so, for him to leave when he was younger than me. So for him to leave when I was like 7 and Ty was, I don't know, 2 or 3, to not do anything after that point. Now, I was so young then, I didn't know. I just wanted my dad to be in my life. Right. But then when I was in his life, just spotty times here and there, he always wanted to be the fun guy, he never wanted to be responsible, but I didn't know that then. Mm-hmm. Well, he ended up coming, my mom, one evening that was rare. Somehow, I guess he knew. My sister was there watching my brother and me, and he knew somehow. And he came to the apartment that I lived in and got me and got a bag and some clothes. And he took me to Tulsa. And that was the only 6 months I didn't live in Springfield, and the only time I ever lived with him. And he lived there for a couple of years. He lived there for a little bit before he got me, mm-hmm. and then for a little bit afterwards. And he always wanted me to choose to live with him. And I never really remember having to make that choice. It was just, he took me. Next thing, and he's my dad, so I'm not scared, but it was just still, it was weird, and thinking back, I'm like, gosh, how crazy is that? That's dysfunction, know? Yeah. And so they find out, or she finds out, I guess, that's where I'm at. I'm sure it's through phone call or whatever, but I was there for 6 months. And then I came back, and because I chose to. Mm-hmm. I did one semester of school there, played football there. That was huge for me for football. But anyway, came back home and lived with my mom throughout the rest, through high school. And she did meet a gentleman who's my stepdad when I was, in junior high, I think. And then he kind of became really, really close in high school and has been married to her for a long time. But most of my young life, my dad was either not around, mm-hmm. even when they were together, or he wasn't around at all because he just left us and left her with that. And that was always such a big thing with me that I felt then. I just didn't understand. But as I got older, I got angrier and angrier about the fact that, man, he's always wanting to build me up, tell me how great I am, give me cash so I can go do fun things, but never did he ever help. Yeah. And I just held a lot of anger about that over the years.
So how did you reconcile that? Because you did have a relationship with him. So how did you work through that anger and still have a relationship with him? Like, what did your boundaries look like? What did that space look like for you?
Yeah. Some of this, I don't know. Yeah. He was a very kind narcissist. Yeah. So the way he lived, hindsight, I didn't even know what a narcissist was until a few years ago, believe it or not. But I figured that I was like, oh, that's a narcissist. But he was like, he was super nice. Like he wasn't angry. He wasn't evil. He wasn't a bad guy, in a sense. He was just very irresponsible. Mm-hmm. And he was always building me up and always trying to be the guy to give me things and say he was going to do this and do that for me. Mm-hmm. Like he was going to pay for college if I didn't get a scholarship. And he was, of course, none of these things came through, mm-hmm. but he would give me cash, and so it was always that. And I didn't, of course I took it, and I connected with him the little bits here and there. It was, I don't know. I really don't know. It was just, we had those interactions on a regular basis. And over time, and I heard Ed Milet, who is a coach that I'm in a group with, and mm-hmm. he said, he's like, over time we figure out who our parents are, mm-hmm. and good, bad, or indifferent. And none of us are perfect. My kids they are figuring out who I am, right. So it's like I'm thankful that initially I was not thankful mm-hmm. for all of the challenges that he presented. And then because how I looked at it is how I don't want to be, which I think can be okay. Right. Just like somebody who's a great parent, you could be like, man, I want to be like them, right? Right. But then as I grew and got coached and matured, I realized looking back, it's like, man, but that was a huge blessing to teach me how I didn't want to be. It's like, I had such a strong motivation to be a better father. And be a better provider. Yeah. My wife and kids are never gonna, they're never gonna have to question that. Yeah. Yeah. And for somebody who has had that experience, like what would you, cause I am one of those, like I have a lot of what not to do. Yeah. What advice? A lot of people do. Yeah. Yes. What advice would you give them to find out what to do? Because to just sit in that and say, well, I have a lot of what not to do. And so in some ways, people tend to repeat cycles because of that. Right. So what advice would you give them to do or to reach out or to navigate the how-tos? Yeah, for sure. Well, I was fortunate to experience what you're asking the answer for, and that was I had coaches. So I had football coaches. I had football coaches in high school, phenomenal one. Swim coach in high school, phenomenal. I got to have the same in college. But then when I got out of college, I got to connect with people like Zig Ziglar, who has passed away, and he came to Springfield, and the likes of Jim Rohn, and I got to learn from like the best of the best in the personal growth space.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know they were the best of the best at the time. This is back when we have cassette tapes, right? And so I go to these things because I'm thinking, man, this sounds cool. I'm going to go to this. And I'm just blown away by who they are. And I was like, I want to learn from them. I want to learn from people who think better, who are doing better, and even better financially, because I came from, poverty by US standards anyway. Yeah. And so I would say, seek out those mentors and leaders and people. Don't just live in the muck and the mire, but seek out the people that might have the kind of life you want to have. And that could be, in their faith life. How do they live that out? How is their fruit displayed? For those that know what we're talking about, and in each area. So in their faith life, in their mental, physical, their mental, which would be their personal growth, professional growth, their physical health, relational health, and even their financial health. And so when I saw Zig Ziglar and I heard him talk about his wife with respect and love, and, it's like, and he had finances, and he had strong relationships, and he had a faith that he wove into everything. And I always believed in a personal relationship with God. Like, I knew without a question, my mom relied on God. She didn't preach at me. She lived it. And I knew my dad believed, but he was just living all over. Right. But then I was kind of anti-church, to be honest. I don't hold it against Jim Bakker now, but there was the Jim Bakker thing that happened years ago. And I don't even know what happened, but I was like, okay, well, I don't want to go there, whatever that is, and so I really didn't have a real interest in church going through college. I had people that asked me to go, and I was like, no, I'm good, and I didn't go. But I knew how important that personal relationship was. And so when I saw people like Zig Ziglar have both, I was like, all right, that's worth like listening to, following. And then I would just keep trying to find more people, both local and famous, because Zig ended up being, he's a famous guy, one of the best. But I would then try to find people locally. I was always paying attention. Go back to my dad's teaching. I'm always paying attention to people. And I'm not, we all are human. We're going to judge. I very rarely have a problem with judging. I have this analogy I've used, and I don't, since forever, and I don't even know who taught it, but it's the whole one finger's pointing at somebody else. If I'm criticizing something or judging something, three are pointing back at me. And I tend to, I'm very critical natured, but I'll look at things, and if I'm criticizing something, I instantly am wondering, okay, why am I criticizing this? And I've found oftentimes it's a weakness within me that is criticizing that. And so to go back to the whole faith being woven into growth and success, I listened to Jim Rohn talk, and not Jim Rome, who was ESPN guy, but Jim Rohn. He's passed away as well. And I heard him talk, and he was saying, and I was in the world of insurance and financial services now, starting my career, never planned on getting in that field, but I was struggling with it because it's a money-focused career. And I was really struggling on the money side. And I heard him say in a training, he said, to have a goal to make $1 million is a great goal. And it caught my attention because I was like, wait a minute, I really respect this guy. I want to listen to him. I'm struggling with this feeling like making the money am I really doing good for people or not? Because so much is talked about how much money you can make and the bonuses you get and all this stuff. And I was like, man, that's not why I'm doing this. I enjoy the money, but I'm doing it to make an impact and help people. And so Jim Rohn said, as he said that, was to have a goal to make $1 million is a great goal. It's a very hard goal because of what it can make of you and what you could do with it. And then I thought, wow, okay, that's a different perspective. I've got to grow to be worthy of making that much money. And then I get the opportunity to be a good steward of that much money. And then if you fast forward, kind of the church piece was when my wife and I met, and we were getting engaged and wanted to get married. I didn't want to just go get married in a church and not know the pastor. I had this internal conviction that was like, we need to actually find a church, which I was always kind of anti-church. And here we are trying to find a church. And I'm like, all right, well, I feel like we need to find a church. And my wife actually found one through some people she knew, and they married us. And I realized now I am the problem with the church. It's like we all are, you know, we're all human.
Sometimes I think it's hard for men to reach out for help and guidance, perspective, and assistance. And it can be for women too. And I'm not saying it in a mean way. I'm just saying like it can be hard for men.
Sure.
Like there's I'm provider, I'm protector to it. And so how do we diffuse that? Like it's so important. I mean, look at what Chance is able to do. Look at the perspective he's able to give because he sought out perspective. He sought out guidance. I think it's so powerful. So how would you diffuse that for the male audience?
Yeah. Well, if you want to grow, you just have to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, if I think a lot of us get stuck.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, sometimes it's more men than women, but I would say people, leaders, driven personalities, people that struggle with self-worth, they can easily live on an island internally and not ever really get connected with people in a meaningful way. We're all so distracted and so busy being busy that we don't have meaningful present conversations, and especially with technology today. So I would just say, do you want to stay where you are or do you want to grow? I mean, if you want to grow, the only one of the few ways to grow, it's not the only way, is your associations matter. And I've learned this for years, and they'll say you are the average of the 5 people you're around the most. And if you look around, are those people challenging you to be better in any of those ways? Are they challenging you to grow in your faith, your mental growth, your physical fitness, your relationships, your finances and resources, all the things that I think we're called to steward? Are your associations challenging you that in any way, or stretching you to grow? Or are you just living a comfortable life and your associations are about the same as where you are, and nobody's really pushing anybody, because really most of us are living very comfortably and we all battle that struggle. But I think the core thing is, do you want to grow? If you want to grow, you got to get around people that think better than you, that perform further than where you are. They're at that next level, whatever that is. And then you need to be willing to listen and be coachable, to ask questions, to pay attention. And sometimes it's hard to know who, especially when we're talking about people locally, like, well, how do I know? Well, first we got to start having real conversations. I mean, that's the name of this. That's so powerful, because we have so many just, nonchalant conversations that we don't really go anywhere with it. And I can't remember which president it was, but I was reading something today. I could pull it up on my phone and read it if you wanted, but it was shared in an inner circle group that I'm in with some very strong, very good men. And it was one of the presidents way back when, and he was in a greeting line, and dozens of people are coming up as he's greeting them. And he says, just because he realizes nobody's listening to me, he says, as they're all walking up, he's like, I just murdered my grandmother this morning, and shakes their hand. I just murdered my grandmother this morning, shakes their hand. And he just keeps doing that until the president of Bolivia comes up and he pauses. He's like, and the guy says, well, maybe she deserved it, or maybe she had it coming to her, or something like that. But it was such a good story about what actually happened and how people don't listen. Because he would say that and they're like, oh, great. And they would just respond. It's like, we all ask people, how you doing? Fine. Well, okay, if you're around people that's all you're talking about is you're busy and you're fine, and that's your social circle, it doesn't mean you don't keep them as friends. One of the things we teach is you just might need to add one, add one person to your circle that pick the area you're either struggling or desiring in the most. I believe in faith foundations. So it could be that, you pick your faith area and it's like, all right, who displays the most fruit in their life? Because time promotes or exposes, and it's not about us being perfect. None of us are. But I found out at a time in a midpoint in my Christian walk as a man, I needed other men that I could relate to who were willing to talk about, and we don't talk necessarily the same way. It may be shorter conversations, but we can have a conversation about, look, man, this is a struggle, or I made a mistake here, or, that's hard for a lot of people to say, men or women. And I needed to be around people who were leaders, who were growth minded, but who I could relate to.
Yeah.
So they're further than me, but they're willing to be a little bit vulnerable too. And I think when we are wanting to grow and we're willing to get a little bit vulnerable and say, man, you know what? I really don't know enough. I really need to grow. And then you find somebody, whether it's a pastor, a teacher, a coach, somebody, and you're thinking, man, this might be somebody I could go and learn from. And here's the interesting thing. You go to them, more than likely, if they are beyond you, they're going to then share with you some of their vulnerability that is like, wow, okay, I thought this guy had that figured out, or this person had that figured out. And it's like, they don't have it figured out either. Okay, great. I can feel good about not having it figured out. And I can get where they are because they said, I still don't have it figured out. It's like, I'm still a major work in process.
Yes.
Whatever your intro was that's nice about me, it's like, I've had the dichotomy blessing of having phenomenal people in my life who have gone through extreme challenges that almost all of my challenges in life, there's one that would be different, but almost all of them, I don't even register them as challenges because I've seen what my mom did. I've seen what other people have gone through. And I could literally give you 6 names and examples because I found that those people were inspiring because my mom was inspiring. And as time promotes who we are, I share this a lot with people when I get to, but my mom was like on the football team. If she played on a football team, she would have been like the 3rd string lineman that never saw the field on the game. Yeah. She was blocking and tackling, practicing every day, doing everything that nobody in the stands is ever going to see.
Yeah.
But she was making people better.
That is so good. That's good. I think I appreciate so much of what you say because we always tend as a society to think strong people are the ones in the open at the top, visible.
Yeah.
But there's diamonds behind the scenes.
No doubt.
There's like, I think I kind of get teary eyed when you say that about your mom because I see so many people who go under the radar.
Yeah.
And their life is powerful. Their life is powerful. Yeah. And I think there's something too, you can hear in your voice, I think, how much you love her and respect her.
Yeah, she's amazing. I mean, she truly did the unseen, the mundane. Yeah. And when you listen to like the Michael Jordans of the world or the Kobe Bryants, and they talk about doing the common uncommonly well. Yeah. And then we see them do the exceptional, which is phenomenal, but we have such phenomenal, and I'm biased towards moms because I was raised by a great mom, and there's a lot more moms that are single parents than there are men, but there are both. Yeah. But there are phenomenal grandparents that are phenomenal difference makers in their life. Mm-hmm. There are phenomenal parents that they can sometimes feel like, okay, I'm not the one that's out there in the spotlight. They're not leading the podcast. They're not coaching a football team. They're not leading a business, but they could be the one person that impacts a kid, a grandkid, another family member, a friend. I mean, they could impact one person who could go impact millions.
Yes.
And that happens, but the person going and impacting the millions is who gets the attention.
Yeah.
And now if you get to know some of those people, like I have gotten to know Ed Milet, and you'll hear him over time, he talks a lot about his dad and his dad's story and his dad's impact. Mm-hmm. And here's the interesting thing about his dad. His dad struggled with alcoholism until he came clean. And there was a lot of talk about that in Ed and all of his talks. But here's what's interesting. He woke up one night and he realized someone saved my dad. And he's like, someone saved my dad. He woke up in the middle of the night and he realized like, I don't know who that is. He's like, somebody at AA saved my dad.
Yeah.
And he's like, and that person who I don't even know, who was somebody who was in AA. And the only way that person could save my dad was he had a dysfunction that was an addiction. That's the only way that qualified him. The only thing that qualified him to help his dad was that they related in the challenge.
Yeah.
And they were both willing to get better.
Yeah.
One more time, just to get better. And so this guy who Ed doesn't even know changes the life of his dad. And the changed life of his dad impacted Ed's life to where he now has changed. I mean, he impacts millions.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but it's like, okay, the guy he doesn't know, huge.
Yeah.
Ed's dad, who's not famous, he's passed away. Huge, priceless. Like none of the great people happen without that. It takes all of us. And really, to me, it's about who are you meant to be at your best?
Yeah.
Some of us are meant to be the best grandmother on the planet.
Yeah.
Whatever that means in their role as a grandmother, whether they're raising kids, grandkids, they've got a phenomenal family that they look at the whole tree down, and they're just that, those phenomenal leaders. Sherry and I are fortunate to have grandparents on her side that were married 74 years that were, again, looking at those people like, who do you aspire to be like? Well, we look to them.
Yeah.
Because we know 50% of marriages don't make it.
Yeah.
We both come from parents who were married and divorced more than once. And so here we're sitting here. The subconscious aspect is like, we could potentially duplicate that easily just because that's where we come from. But then you have the grandparents and you see what they have, and it's like, wow, that's inspiring.
But I need listeners, that's a word. That is a word where he is talking about the impact of his mother and how what he just said. It is a word for you. If you feel unseen, if you feel like the things you are doing over and over again are going unnoticed, seeds are being planted. Seeds are being planted, and they will grow. They will grow, they will sprout. And just like a normal seed, you don't know when it's going to sprout, but something's happening. And so what Chance just said, that's a word. That's powerful. Yeah. And so you've known your wife 2 years though prior, right?
No, 2
getting
weeks.
married. 2 weeks prior?
Yeah. So we started dating March 14th, 1992, and Tanner was born April 1st, 1992. So he was born 2 weeks after we were dating by her younger sister, who has been in the picture the whole time.
Yeah.
But she just was younger, and we stepped in and helped, and it was really a family affair. And then we just ended up, most of his life he was with us, and we've been, to us, he's, they say it takes a village to raise a kid, and we were fortunate enough to have a lot of family members that love him, and his mom loves him too. And we were just fortunate and blessed to be in a position to be able to do that. But 2 weeks after we started dating, we had Tanner in our life. And as far as when we started living together, we were living in sin before we got married, but I forget the exact time frame of that. But he was with us pretty young.
Yeah. Wow. It is interesting. Yeah. It's interesting when most people are getting to know each other in a fun way and when you're parents from the get-go. It's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, it really is. And my wife is one of those people that is kind of the unsung or unseen. It's interesting because she's shy, but I would say she's an extrovert. I'm not shy, but I'm an introvert.
Yeah.
But she's always been a phenomenal mom with our kids and anyone's kids. I mean, she was just always, and she worked at a daycare when we started dating, and then became the director. And until I could, make it to where she could be at home. And even after that, we would still be watching other people's kids at time. I mean, that was her gift. And she always knew she wanted to be a mom and wanted to be a great mom. And she is. I mean, she's the best mom our boys could ever hope for. And I'm extremely blessed that there's so many things I could say and share, but she's one of those that doesn't need the spotlight. I invited her to come here, but she gets uncomfortable with things like this. And at times she'll do things like, but she's phenomenal. Now, when you get to know her, she's easy to talk to. She's extroverted, she'll be the social butterfly with the group. But I'm just blessed. I mean, she was so responsible early on, which was great for me because I come from a very irresponsible dad, and I need to learn how to be responsible, right? Yeah. And that's one of the things I think that Tanner brought to us was he wasn't with us all the time in the very, very beginning, but he was with us enough because she was really helping a lot with him. And then we both were. That you have to be responsible. There's I guess you choose to, but it just kind of required a different situation. It wasn't, we weren't choosing. And I'd been a little crazy in college, so I was ready to stop. I mean, I was just like, okay, this is, again, not something I want to duplicate. Right. And I'd like to decrease this and get on a better path. And that was a blessing, to know that your life has an impact on somebody else and they are relying on you. And it's just, Tanner he's 32 and he's truly like our first son. And we have 2 grandkids and they're 4 and 1. And yeah, they're phenomenal.
And what would you say? So anybody who's about to become a father, who came from a place of dysfunction and they're about to become a father for the first time, and they're like scared because questions of how am I going to do this? Am I going to mess it up? Am I, all the feelings, all the questions and doubts and insecurities and, oh my gosh, what do I like? How? What would you say to encourage them, or maybe like a mindset, or what would you have wanted to hear coming into raising a child?
Yeah, well, I wanted to be a great dad so badly. I think that having that desire, if you have that desire, that's great. If you're a little scared and you don't even really know what desire is, you're just scared, because that is a scary thing. I would go back to the associations and kind of think, okay, who could I look to as an example? And I would definitely at least explore, depending on where people are in their faith. I definitely challenge people to explore, to seek, and you will find, you may not find immediately, but definitely seek. And I think even starting with something as simple as the verse of the day, to just start putting something in your mind that's different than your own thoughts, that's a lot more powerful. But outside of that, I think you can look for people that are great fathers. But one of the biggest challenges we all have is we all struggle with self-awareness. And I think if I could go back and talk to me back then, I wish I had been aware of how we all struggle with self-awareness. And I would have probably, now knowing what I know now, is I would have tried to connect with somebody who was a better father and somehow interacted back and forth and figured out, okay, help me become self-aware. Try to find 3 people. It's like, how do you experience me? And work on a little bit of alone time, both in your faith and on your own, just being reflective and trying to figure out and process really who you are and how you are, because we have a very hard time changing anything we're not self-aware of. So if we're fearful and that's where our focus is, the first thing we need to do is we need to change the focus and try to not be focused on the fear and find somebody who we can use as an example. But then also, I think we can just step back and just take a little bit of one-on-one time and be reflective. That's always been very good for me. Now, I'm an introvert, so for me in the early morning, it's easy for me to do that. But that's been really good for me to think, because it makes me think about the things I'm trying to battle, not duplicating. And okay, but then where am I going to find somebody to duplicate, and find? But none of us have a book for parenting, right? So we're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to struggle. We're all going to have issues with our kids. And I think part of that path is just having, when in doubt, love, right? Just when in doubt, love. And there's going to be so many things that are going to happen that you can't control. But when you're in doubt on what to do, you just love them. And sometimes loving them is being present. And in their lives in general, and then being present physically with them at times. Yeah. So I don't know.
I think adding like being okay with saying, hey, I don't have an answer for that right now.
No doubt.
Or, hey, I need a minute to process, instead of out of like that anxiety, like, oh, I have to say something, because then we kind of screw it up even more with me raising my hand. So, and being okay with apologizing and saying, hey, that's not, I've had to do that. I can be a hothead sometimes. And so like, I've had to go back and be like, that wasn't about you. That was, the thing upset me, but the reaction wasn't about you. That was like, that's a reflection of me not taking a moment to pause and not letting our children absorb our humanness.
Yeah.
Humanness.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. Saying I don't know is a big, big thing. And then apologizing if you can is a huge thing as well. And I've not always done that really, really well. I would say I struggled more as the kids got into their teen years and they start to be a little bit kind of like they're going to bow up at you. And I'm a strong personality dad, it's like, I don't think you want to bow up with me. And then they really do. And then you're like, and then I find I'm acting 17 because they think they're 40, 45. I'm like, wait a minute, this is not right. And I step back and my wife's usually the one coaching me to be like, look, you didn't help that, and this is not necessarily my dad coming out in me, but just we're gonna have challenges the whole way. I mean, I guess one of the things I would say, thinking back to your question, is don't think you're gonna get it all right.
Yeah.
It's like you're not gonna do it all right. I mean, just let go of the fear and go enjoy it and have the desire to love them and be there and know you're gonna mess up and do your best to get better, you know.
Well, one thing I want to ask before we move into our next topic, finding that community of people, just in case there's somebody listening and they're like, I don't even know where to start that. Or maybe they're new to an area, or like, what are some spaces that they can find community, and also introduce, you know, how do they ask for somebody to be in their circle? I call it a circle of people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how do you ask? How do you approach that? That can be intimidating, fear of rejection, you know? So where can you find some community like that, and how do you ask for it?
Well, for me, it was in the circles I was in. So if I go back to where I started, definitely it was in college with the professors, and just who did I see that was somebody I might think is somebody that could teach me outside the field. Really, it was more outside of college, though, when I started getting into business and getting into church, and just getting around people who I was just paying attention. I was always picking up on the nonverbal. I'm a big believer in time promotes or exposes. So I was just always watching people and paying attention and asking questions and connecting with people. So I would say, to find a community, I do believe that the church is a good place to find a community. If you can find a church home where you can connect and relate and listen and learn, I think that is a great place. I think a great pastor can be someone who could be great. I think coaches can be great if you can find them. But again, a lot of people don't even know where to look for a coach. And we get out of high school or college, and many people don't even know coaches exist, or why would I need a coach? I'm not doing a sport or whatever. That's a good question. You know, I think part of the question is actually real timely, in that today it's probably more important than it's ever been.
Yeah.
Because I'm in a few communities that are very strong. And so I would put out there, I mean, like, I'm happy to give my email to be a person in somebody's community, my phone number, if they ever need help, to point them in a direction of the resources I know of people, you know, podcasts like yours, people that are out there that are pouring into people. I can give people lists of, for me, it was books initially. It was John Maxwell. It was, you know, they were just people that I just kept looking for better information. So for me, it was a lot of people I didn't know.
Yeah.
Initially, it was people I was reading and people that were far from me. And then I got to meet some of them, and they became people I knew. Yeah. So the books and the podcast, now in today's information age, it's both hugely available and hard to figure out who do I want to listen to? You know, how do I know? And that's where I'm willing to help anybody kind of sort through who would be a good fit, and give them 2 or 3 or 4 people to go start listening to or reading. I think listening to a podcast like what you're doing, where you're interviewing people and having real conversations, where people can start to listen to real conversations and think for real about their life. You know, one of my mentors said one time, this was a business mentor about 10 years ago, he came up to me, very kind, but he just said, "Hey, look, you're exactly where you want to be in life." And I was like, pause. And I'm like, "No, I'm not," you know? And he's like, "Yeah, you really are." And I'm like, "No, I'm not where I want to be in every area," you know? And we went back and forth like 3 or 4 times. And he said, "Look, based on the decisions you've made over the last 7 minutes, 7 hours, 7 days, 7 weeks, 7 years, you are exactly where you want to be." And I was like, dang, okay. You know, and I had to process that. And he was very kind, but he's very pointed. Yeah. And and the more I realized, I was like, he's right.
We have talked a lot about growing up, you know, your dad, community, and now we're going to talk about probably the biggest thing in your life, losing your son.